my girls thick. I like them chunky.
Gotta have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, chunky. Those school something to pick up in a hoop. I tell them I love, but I don't love them like dog pound and stew. Thick like gumbo. Introduce them to the gang. And enough thickness me to hit. Introduce them to my thing. Trick bread, I'm in the trick head on me, and I put words in their head like Sony and Paul. I found out what it was doing. They would try to get me killed, homie. I treat them all the same, man. I tell them I love them and I go with me. Start getting on nerves and my gun to hit them. They break up with they niggas. Niggas just to be mean. I've been doing this at a young age. As a young busy bee, they know what I do. They know I slang, yeah. And I take them all to the hotel, cause I can't let them all know where I stay. Only thing they wanna be seen right with a young baller, shot caller. Give a nice skill, put some things in the head and act like I'm sincere. Gotta give a God with these hoes, nigga. You call me Solomon, they say they don't suck dick. Next thing you know, my nut be swallowing. Gotta have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. But don't be on fat, it won't purr. Well, let me touch that cat. Got this dick appeal, show that that's for real, baby girl. Just throw it back, make it bounce, make it jump. Show that girl I like that chunk. Let it swing, let it hang, baby girl. Just do your thing, jump clapping. You say you want a couple dollars from me, while you dick teasing, I'm steady cheesing like I'ma get it for free. On your knees, open please, throwing this muscle on bob and weave. I'm seeing all that ass, seeing all my cans. Let's grab a drink and leave. I like head, and it's all good, but I've heard that monkey. I like that monkey from the back. Oh, I'm smacking that chunky. Have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, chunky. Those school chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, chunky. Those school something to pick up in a move. I tell them I love, but I don't love them like dog pound and stew. Think like don't be fat. It won't purr, but let me touch that cat. Got this dick appeal, show that that's real, baby girl. Just so it back. They break up with they nigga. You say you want a couple dollars from me, I'ma get for free. Chunky, 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 chunky. Those smooth chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them chunky, 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 chunky. Those smooth chunky, 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 chunky. Gotta have them.